So, a gute Woche, and welcome to the first shiur for Tavshilin Pei. Now we're going to the fifth year, 4.5 years, but the fifth year of these shiurim, Baruch Hashem, and thank you for the core group who keep this going, Bez Hashem, and then there's people who are listening to the recordings, but we need to have the nucleus who meeting Kesidron. Okay, so in Minig Yisrael, we have a Shabbos Shuvo drasha, and so I'm going to share with you the nekudas which were discussed today just this afternoon, our Shabbos Shuvo drasha on Shabbos afternoon in our Kehillah. It's the same in Yonim. So first of all, about if a person has to drink on Yom Kippur. So the principle here is that, well, we know we're not allowed to drink on Yom Kippur, not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur, but then there is a minimum shiur, a minimum amount. If a person has that amount, they have violated Yom Kippur, chayav koros, and we're going to try to avoid that amount. And so if a person does have to have fluids, intake of fluids, so we'll try to have less than that amount, less than the punishable amount, and have it in intervals in this way that they haven't had a punishable amount in one session. So we have with food, we have a regime, and then we have with drinks. So on the bottom of your screen, you have a quote from the Mishnah, which says a person hashosa meloi lugmo, one who drinks. Now, the word lugmo is not a common word in Hebrew, but it's translated as cheek. So one who has a full cheeks, meloi lugmo, his full cheeks, then he's punishable. Says the Gemara, Omer of Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, loy meloi lugmo mamish. No, we don't mean that the limit for the quantity is the full cheeks. Elo kol she'ilu yisalkenu letzad echad. If you'd be able to push the liquid to one side, and somehow it looks like you got full cheeks, then there's a discussion further. But that remains the halacha, that we're not talking about meloi lugmov, but kemlא lugmov. And reading the Gemara carefully, we will see that meloi lugmov is a bit more than a revius, and kemlא lugmov is obviously less than that. How much less is not so clear. And these words, and you can look at the top of the screen, are also, and these words are not so clear to me. What does it mean? Yisalkenu letzad echad, you should push the contents of your mouth to one side, and it looked like you got full cheeks. How does that work? If you push it to one side, how do you have full cheeks? So it's not clear. And at least for Anoshim Kerakenu, and Reb Chaim Noah writes about this in his volume called Shiur Torah. And he says, to understand this, how much you could give for a chayla, who dova kosher b'deirenu shenismatu halvobis. He struggles, really, it's poshta pshat, but also the poshta pshat is a bit of an enigma. What does it mean exactly? I measured with myself. I have a cup with a shear of revius and with lines. I tried to get as much water in my mouth as I could, emptied it, and it was a little bit more than a revius. So this is what Reb Chaim Noah is saying. Efshel limdait hashir ayedei sheyamalu pi achela mayim kama she'efshel. You're going to try to fill as much water as you can. That's going to be meloi lugmov mibeis hatzdot, mamish mibeis hatzdotim. Stuff as much water as you can in your mouth. Try it. It's not so easy. V'achar kach yiflit hamayim letecha keil. Then spit it out into a cup. So that's well known, yeah. But now he says, well, that's meloi lugmov, and then hachatzim yishir hamayim ha'elu half of that amount will pochos mikemlei lugmiv of the Yom Kippurim. So he's telling us as much water as you can fit in your mouth, and half of that should be a shiur of kemlë lugmiv, which is very different to what I had understood hitherto. And he's saying really to go down. So if, let's say, meloi lugmiv, the way I measure it for myself, and this goes according to the person's capacity, call me a big mouth if you want. So, all right, so I managed to get about 90 mil, 95 mil, and what he's saying is half that. So let's say for myself, it would be 45 or 47 mil, a bit more. He talks about a shiur of 40 something. So we're talking about a little bit more than half a revius. That would be safe. And I've seen, after I saw Reb Chaim Noah say that, many other malaktim also say something similar, that one should measure with a little bit more than half a revius. If necessary, one can go more, because the Poshta Pshat and the Gemara Lachari is more than that. Okay. Let's move on. So that's the kemlë lugmiv. Very fascinating that you got here a Gemara and brought la halacha, and the practical application of this. It remains an enigma. Till Reb Chaim Noah comes along, he says he doesn't understand it. But okay, let's move on. Let's move on to our next question. Okay, so this season, this Tishri, we've got 3 times Eiruv Tavshilin. One has passed already, and we have 2 ahead. So there's still value in discussing this for the next 2 Yom Tovim, first days and the last days of Sukkot. So there's a concept called Eiruv Tavshilin, which allows you to cook on Friday of Yomtov, second day of Yomtov in this case, for eating on Shabbos. Eiruv Tavshilin doesn't allow other activities. For example, we may have discussed this about carrying stuff, which is not food, to carry a sefer on Friday to use on Shabbos. It's not so poshut. Okay, but meanwhile, I'm dealing with a case where there's no Eiruv at all. Now, in a built-up community, so if you forgot to make an Eiruv, the likelihood is it's going to be the Halocho-idea who made an Eiruv. So you can rely on them. But what happens if you are in a small shtetl and you are the shliach and no one else knows, but you are the Halocho-idea? I heard once the Rabbi Chadakov said that the Lubavitcher shliach, and he's the chief rabbi of that community, but you shouldn't tell everyone. You should feel responsibility like the chief rabbi. So you're shliach in a small shtetl, here's the Halocho-idea. And if he forgot to make Eiruv Tavshilin, there's no one else to rely on. So what can you do? So I'm not worried about the challahs because they baked the challahs before. I'm not so worried about the food either. There are various other solutions, which in the first volume of Nesivim B'stei HaShlichus, there's one chapter dealing with this scenario, because I think it's peculiar for shluchim that this could be a problem. So there's more discussion there. I want to just limit ourselves to the questions which are raised now, because we're limited in time, and that's why also, Rabbi Grossman, I'm not going to deal with a shiur for food for Yom Kippur, because that's going to take time, and it's not on our agenda for tonight. It can be discussed over the telephone if necessary. Let's come back. So now someone did not make an Eiruv Tavshilin. Are they allowed to light candles on Friday for Shabbos? Do you need an Eiruv Tavshilin to allow you to light candles? So we've got here questions 2 and 3 are slightly related. Is do you need to have an Eiruv Tavshilin to allow you to light candles? Now, you can take a look here on this screen. We've got Sif Yud Tes. This is the Shulchan Aruch, the Briefs of Karo. Mishaloi Eirav Mutal Ahadlik Neil Shor Shabbos. He says, you don't need an Eiruv Tavshilin to light candles. But yes, and those say you do need an Eiruv Tavshilin. So he brings two opinions, yeah, whether it's necessary or not. So now comes along in the next sieve. We're going to read the next sieve. It says here, Misha loy eirav, just like you're not allowed to cook, others can't cook for you either. Then he has, if mamish you have no eirav, then yesh oimim shemuta lefois betzimtzum. Your mom is desperate. You didn't make an Eiruv, it's now your Friday, and you have no food for Shabbos. So you're allowed to bake one loaf of bread, cook one pot of food, or lahadlik ner echad. Now I've got here, I don't understand what's going on here. You see, if you'd test, you told me that you don't need an Eiruv for ner Shabbos. Yeah, sure. Comes in Sifchov, he says, yes, you're allowed to light ner echad. So it looks very clear that in Sifchov, he's following the stricter opinion that you do need to have an Eiruv to light candles, and if you don't have an Eiruv, then we'll allow you to have just one bare minimum, one candle. Just bear with me a moment. I'm just going to try to erase that scribble, which is on the screen. Someone tell me how to do it, but it's just going to bother me the whole time. Somewhere there's some kind of function somewhere, tools, or if someone has put it on there, perhaps can erase it. No. Okay, we'll just have to bear with it. All right. Okay, if the person who put that on can erase it, I'll be grateful. Okay. Could be a kid who's playing around with a computer. Let's come back. So we have here the Mechaber starts off that if you didn't make an Eiruv, you could still then he says that he's Machmir. Okay. The Alter Rebbe does not mention the lenient opinion. And from the Alter Rebbe is mashma bepashtus that if you didn't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, you wouldn't be allowed to light candles. Here comes the question then. It says you're allowed to light Neir Echad. What about if you have electric lights? So again, you're shliach in an isolated community, no Eiruv Tavshilin. Are you allowed to light one candle for Shabbos? Or is there a special exemption to be allowed to light Neirs for Shabbos? So I saw in Piskei Teshuvos, he brings, so those who say, oh, Neir Shabbos is so important, such as Agmas Nefesh, if you don't light Neir Shabbos, and therefore you should be allowed to light Neir Shabbos. I beg to differ, and I'm not the only one. You can see here in the notes, he brings from Igros Moshe that now that you've got electric lights, so you're not going to sit in the dark, then there's no heter to light candles for Shabbos because you're not desperate. Of course, it's a mitzvah to light Shabbos candles, but you're not desperate, and therefore you don't have a heter to light candles at all. It quotes a couple of sources. So again, if a person doesn't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, we're going to take the stricter opinion, first of all, that without an Eiruv Tavshilin, there's no lighting candles. And even if it's Neir Shabbos. Now, if you're going to come back and ask me what happens now in the future, do I have to light an extra candle? We'll have to deal with that. But there doesn't seem to be a heter to light candles for Shabbos. Now, I just to prove that to you. To prove that, so the point which I'm saying is, although it's so important to light Neir Shabbos, but it doesn't allow you to light Neir Shabbos if you don't have an Eiruv Tavshilin. Now, it says also in this halacha, if you don't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, pas echod. You know there's a Jewish custom to have 2 loaves of bread for each of the meals. It's called lechem mishneh. Halocha and Gemara. Yeah. Now, if you didn't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, you're going to have pas echod. That means no lechem mishneh, not for the first night, not Friday night, not for Shabbos day, and not for Shabbos. Yeah. So you're going to have to skip on that. You don't have Eiruv Tavshilin. We're going to allow you to have a bare minimum pas echod. So the same thing. You want to be able to have Neir's Shabbos. You have the lights. You're not going to sit in dark. So then no, then that wouldn't be a het. Okay. So now I'm going to go now to deal with question number 3. One time, my wife and I went to Israel for Shavuos, and Shavuos was Friday and Shabbos, and so that we had a
call Rov Sterling.
We were staying in a house, just my wife and myself. The owner of the house wasn't there, and we ate every meal. We ate by mishpacha. We weren't going to eat at that house at all. So here's the question: do we have to make an Eiruv Tavshilin? What we do? Where was my wife going to light candles? In the house where we were sleeping. Why? Because I'm just addressing a very common question. If you're eating in one place and sleeping in another place, where do you light candles? Very, very common question. So my take on that is, if you're sleeping over in a house where the missus is lighting candles in any case, then you're just an extra. As an extra, you should be lighting where you're eating. But if you are boarding, sleeping over in a place where there's no one else lighting, then you have the shiur of you have a shiur to light there. So my wife lit at the place where we were sleeping. Whereas the meals we were eating out. So here it comes back to the question. If the only thing I'm going to do for on Friday for Shabbos is lighting candles, do you make an Eiruv? Do you need to make an Eiruv Tavshilin? Well, really, you've just seen that the Mechaber brings 2 opinions. So whilst the Alter Rebbe just ignores the lenient opinion, but we know that there is an opinion that you don't need to have an Eiruv Tavshilin for lighting candles for Shabbos. And therefore, the psak I got at the time was, you make an Eiruv Tavshilin without a brocho. If you're going to put up hot water for Shabbos, then that's a different story. Then you have to make a Eiruv Tavshilin for putting up the water. But just for lighting candles, you don't need to. You should make an Eiruv Tavshilin without a brocho. Now, I want to address this a little bit broader. Left side of my screen. Yeah, so thank you. I'm not going to deal with it now. It's too hard for me. What? No. It's just I've got this green line on the thing. I can't take it off. Okay. So now a very practical question. You've got in Crown Heights, you've got 4 girls sharing a basement. So what do they do from the hadlokas neighbors? So all right, so one girl will light over there because there's a chiyuv. But if they're all eating out, so why is there more than one person lighting candles there? Once there is already, and you can say the one who's lighting, some poskim say just light where you're eating. I'm saying that at least one can light in the place where they're sleeping because they need to have a light there. By the time they come home, the candles are gone out, but they will have at least the electric lights. They have in mind the electric lights. So again, girls who are sleeping, they're boarding in one place and eating out. So one of them can light in their place where they're boarding. Have in mind the electric lights. The other girls, why are they lighting there? They should be lighting b'mokim ha'achila. But that's a very difficult thing, because if they have to light where they're eating, it means they have to go before Shabbos to the place where they're eating, and the meal is going to be an hour and a half later. So it's could be very awkward. So is there a way that they could light candles where they're sleeping, even though they're not eating there? So here you have on the screen from Piskei Teshuvos, where he addresses this point. One who wants to light candles not where they're eating. So he gives one idea, or to include electric light. But I say that justifies one person, not several. So then the third solution is that they to eat something there, near where the candles are, and then that's like a mokem achila. Better to make kiddush there. So either they have longer candles that when they get back, they still have the candles alight and have enough from the candles and have something to eat when they get back, which may be practical, may not be so practical. Alternatively, that before they go out to make kiddush, after lighting candles, to make kiddush and have a bit of rosinus. So that's all very well. That's throughout the year. Yeah, this is a problem which is every single Shabbos. Now, let's go now to the Eiruv Tavshilin, to the Yomtov. It's all very well. I can say one girl will light candles, so that they shouldn't be sitting in the dark. When it comes the second night of Yomtov, or when Yomtov goes into Shabbos, there's no dark in any case. There's no need to light candles when the electricity there is in any case. You can't make a brocho on yesterday switching on electricity. Mail on a Friday, you switch on electricity close to Shabbos, one of the rooms, the toilet, whatever. So then you made a brocho on something which you did close to Shabbos. But on the second night of Yom Tov, you can't make a brocho on candles and have in mind electricity. It's irrelevant. So the second night of Yom Tov, then they should be lighting b'mokim ha'achila. So now, coming back to the previous question, do you need to have an Eiruv Tavshilin in order to light candles? Well, if you're going to be lighting b'mokim ha'achila, that's not a problem. Again, she's going to be eating out the second night of Yom Tov, or the night of Shabbos. If she's lighting candles there, there's no question that she has to make an Eiruv Tavshilin, because she's part of that household. She doesn't need an Eiruv Tavshilin for that. Where she would need an Eiruv Tavshilin is if she's going to light in her own apartment and eat out, then to put up an Eiruv Tavshilin without a brocho. Going around it's like a lot of discussion here, but it's so relevant, the Maisa. So yeah, let's move on. So on Erev Yom Tov, someone sent me a question. Are they allowed to mash eggs on Yom Tov using a masher or something? So let's take a look. Let's lay the rules here. On Yom Tov, you are allowed to do melacha, to prepare food. The kind of thing which could have been done without any depreciation in quality should not be done on Yom Tov. So, for example, making pasta, you wouldn't be allowed to do on Yom Tov because it's actually no better if it's made fresh. Actually, it's better when it's a bit old. Okay. Grating, now the Alter Rebbe takes the view that you're not allowed to grate morer. We make chrein and we keep it in jars for a few weeks. The Alter Rebbe paskins you're not allowed to grate morer on Yom Tov. Others are lenient on that. Another discussion. Something like carrots. Are you allowed to grate carrots on a hand grater on Yom Tov? So carrots, if you'd grate them a day before, they may lose some of their crispness. You are allowed to grate them, but you'd have to do with a shinui. So with an unusual way. So instead of grating the carrots into a bowl, you grate them onto the counter, and then you put them into a bowl. That's the ruling over there. So here we have on the screen from Hilchas Yomtov, Tovkuf Dalet, about grating cheese. This is hard cheese. Would you be allowed to grate cheese? So he says you are allowed to grate cheese with a grater because it's normal to do it only in small amounts for immediate use. However, you have to do it different to the way you do it in the week, because you could have done it before Yomtov, but it wouldn't have lost its flavor. And even if it would lose its flavor, you should also do a bit of a change. Okay, so to grate cheese, he's saying you'd have to do it with a shinui. So to use a masher, which is a designated tool for this, that would not be okay. Now, I know there's a difference, and I'm sure you know, there's a difference between things which grow on the ground and which don't. So, for example, for Shabbos, there's a difference between mashing a banana and mashing an egg, because mashing bananas grow from the ground, so it's stricter. Mashing an egg is easier. However, to use a designated tool, especially for grating the eggs, for mashing the eggs, that shouldn't be done, because you need to have a shinu mider chachel. Yeah, okay. Just one interesting comment. If you have the Shulchan Aruch open, you'd see that the next seif talks about that you are allowed to crumble bread with a grater, because ein techino achar techino. There's no grinding after grinding once it's been ground. So there's a little bit of a discussion. Why is there a problem of grinding with cheese? Because cheese is a composite and bread is a composite. Why should there be? So a very interesting explanation. When we say ein teuchen achar teuchen, there's no grinding after grinding, is because like this. The bread is from wheat, which was ground. And the grinding of the wheat, even in the bread, the benefit of the grinding is still there. So it's as if it's still, to some degree, it's particles, if that makes sense. What would happen if the grinding had been completely nothing left of it? It's completely back to a solid. So then grinding would apply. That's why it applies by cheese. Although before it was, let's say it was particles, but because now it's become mamish a mass, so then the grinding would apply. So let's say, for example, as I'm talking, let's say you had chocolate. So then would you be allowed to grate chocolate? According to this, you wouldn't be allowed to. Even let's say the chocolate had been made of, perhaps it was made of particles or the powder, but because it's become mamish a composite, a solid mamish, which you don't see any small crumbs within it, then according to this, there would be an issue of grating, which is an interesting question. People do grate chocolate for decorating stuff, etc. Okay. Right. Let's see. Yeah, so about mashing an avocado on Shabbos and Yomtov. So someone's asking, in the Shmir Shabbos Kolchoso, he says that mashing an avocado should be done with a spoon, not with a fork, because he sees mashing as a form of grinding. Others disagree with him. So he's basically on the Chazon Ish, who says that mashing is a form of grinding, and others see no, that mashing is not grinding, because grinding means it's made into particles, whereas mashing, it remains a mush. So there's room to be makel on as far as dafka with mashing. With the eggs, though, because it does come into separate particles, then there's more of an issue of grinding, although it is not gedule karka. So bekitzer, let's remain with that. Mashing the eggs could be done with a fork, and that can be done even on Shabbos, to mash it with a fork, but to use a dedicated tool for it shouldn't be done on Yomtov, and so you're suggesting mashing it with a shinoi. If you could, yeah, you could possibly find an unusual way of doing it. But I've got a suggestion for you. Life will be easier if you do it on Erev Yomtov with your food processor and then keep it in a container instead of having to do it on Yomtov. I just want to throw in something though. I discussed this in the afternoon. That to make egg salad on Shabbos, to take mashed egg, which is now particles, and then to mix it with mayonnaise and to make it into a mass, that's something which shouldn't be done on Shabbos. Because on Shabbos, we're not allowed to make a dough, which means taking powder called flour and mixing it with liquid and making it into a dough. That's called losh or lisho. So the same thing, taking loose particles of egg and putting in mayonnaise, which is going to bind them into a mass, that's something which shouldn't be done on Shabbos. Let's move on. Right, so someone's asking me a question. What's why should a glass? Because the sukkah is meant to provide shade. The glass doesn't provide shade. So why should a glass roof over a sukkah disqualify the sukkah? That's the question. He wasn't asking. Motzei is asking to understand, which is actually an interesting question. And here we have on the screen from Simon Tofresh Chavov, that's the second Simon in Hilchos Sukkah, where it says that the sukkah has to be to provide shade. And if the sukkah is actually for dwelling, where you could live there bikviyas in a proper permanent way, so then that would not be okay. If it's, let's say, a place for storage, a warehouse, etc., so that would not be okay for a sukkah, because the sukkah has to be, you can see here, if it's made to protect from rain, if it's not just to protect from light, from sunlight, then that would be called a bias. So really, it's the answer to the question is not so clear here. But the thing is that the sukkah under the roof, under the glass roof is a protection from rain. So therefore, the glass roof makes it a bias, and therefore the sukkah built in under a glass roof would basically be a bias, or a sukkah in a bias, which therefore it's possible. So it's not because it's of the sail, not because of the shade, not because the shade is provided with the sukkah, but because it's a bias, and that's why it wouldn't be okay. I think we discussed this in the past about whether if you put on extra schach to protect you not only from rain but also to protect you from cold, would that be a problem? Would that be a how you say, a compromise on the sukkah? I'm not going to discuss it now. It's just something which is on my mind. Right. So here you have from the Sefer HaSukkah HaSholem, where he's talking about this very question that the Sefer Mikroe Kodesh from Rav Frank asks, that if you have a glass roof over the sukkah, so he says, but it's protecting from the rain, and that's what's not okay. Okay, let's come back to a question for Kabbolas Shabbos. So when Yomtov, the last day of Yomtov is Simchas Torah, and then that goes into Friday night. So do you say in Halocho-idea, do you say Simcha or ובצהלה or Berino ובצהלה? That was the question which he asked. So first of all, I have here, this is from the forthcoming Siddur Bez Hashem. So a print of a Siddur Arizal, Tov Tzadik Hey. That's 10 years before the Alter Rebbe is born. B'Yomtov shebe'erev Shabbos yesh loimer b'simcha b'mkoim berino. So Yomtov, which is erev Shabbos, yeah, that's what it means. The Yomtov is on a Friday, so one also would say b'simcha. and further discussion about this, that the minhag in the Rebbe's in 770, that indeed also they would say בשמחה. And just want to add a very simple point, that when you've got Yomtov, until you made Havdalah, it's still Yomtov. You're not allowed to do Melacha. So when you're going from Yomtov into Shabbos, so long as you haven't said a Baruch HaMavdil, no, we don't know HaMavdil in any case, yeah? You're going into Shabbos. So and until so it's still Yomtov. So therefore you still say B'simcha. It's still Yomtov until you daven and say B'yom HaShabbos Hazeh. But until then, it's still Yomtov. So you say B'simcha, or until you say brocho, which declares it at night. But until you made a declaration that the preceding day is finished, so the preceding day continues. Let's finish off with this latest. Someone's talking about mashing avocados won't keep. I'm not going to start suggesting to put in lemon juice, etc. That you'll have to have. And there's a different WhatsApp group for how to make avocados keep from one day to the next. As a professional, you have to know which things you don't know what to talk about. Okay. So someone came up with a idea that people are very concerned about the gas being for 3 days Yomtov, so it's 72 hours. People are concerned of safety, or not so much safety, but the cost, about the discomfort. Is there a way to stop the gas burning all this time? And you've got a Yotzei candle, so when you need it, you light it again. So there is a concept of gram kibui, which means indirect causation of the fire, of a flame going out. And there are those who allow gram kibui. And so someone came up with a brilliant idea, and this went viral. Modern gas cookers are built in with a sensor. And the sensor, if there's gas without a flame, so then the sensor cuts out the gas supply. So near the burner, there's some kind of prod of some sort sticking out, and that's a sensor. So if you take, let's say, a metal spatula, and you put it as a wall between the sensor and the burner, so the next few seconds, the sensor will realize, or will think, there's no flame. So the sensor will say, there's no flame, cut off the gas. So they cut off the gas through a groma. So this is the latest, good idea or not, which has gone on many WhatsApps. Is it okay or not? So gram kibui. So let's address this. We have here in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Simon Tovkov Yodalad, and you can see a quote here on the screen. Ve'ein zeh doime legram kibui shehu osur. The Alter Rebbe passes gram kibui is not allowed. And here he talks about placing a candle in a place, to take a candle in a place where it's likely to be blown out by the wind. So that wouldn't be okay. He says you're not allowed to place a candle where it's likely to go out. He says you shouldn't open a window near a candle where it's likely to be blown out because of gram kibui. There is a concept of gram kibui. So there is, for example, if there's a fire spreading, so then there is even on Shabbos, there is a idea of placing barrels of water, and then the fire will reach the barrels and will burn the barrels, and the barrels will then split, and the water will gush out, and so then the fire will go out. There is such a concept. So the answer is that gram kibui is allowed when there's a loss involved. But when there's no loss involved, so gram kibui, according to the Alter Rebbe, says is not allowed. Mr. Brewer does allow gram kibui, even if there's no loss involved. And therefore, this discussion of this trick of putting this blade and sensors, all that gram kibui is, according to the Mr. Brewer, has merit. According to the Alter Rebbe, you see, he says gram kibui is osur. a couple more points about that. There's a general. Are you allowed to turn down the gas on Yomtov? Now, when I turn down the gas, have I put out the fire, or I have deprived the flame of its fuel supply? L'chayr is the latter. So, if I've got a lamp and it's got a flame, it's got a wick and a flame, it's an oil lamp, and it's got, let's say, 500 ml of oil. If I on Shabbos scoop out 1 spoon of oil and I put it into my salad, so that is going to be considered extinguishing, because this oil lamp would have burnt for 5 hours. Now it's going to burn for 4.5 hours. So that is takaos. That's chayiv. So if I did, so there you see, I've deprived the fuel from this flame. That's called a malocha. So I heard the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein. Now that might be true with a gas when you've got your own gas supply. And you can say, therefore, the whole canister is now as if it were owned by this flame, and by extinguishing by depriving is considered extinguishing. But where you've got a municipal supply of gas, you've got the whole of New York, the whole of London, you've got pipes, and it's not like this, and everyone has their canister. But where you have a whole city, to say that the whole of London's gas is toffel to my is subservient, is dedicated to my cooker, it seems to be unreasonable, and therefore there is room to be lenient to turn down the gas if necessary. That's I heard the name of Rav Moshe. I want to say one more thing about this topic, about where we talk about gram kibui. So it comes the second night of Yomtov, and if you don't have a gas flame, you only have electricity. So how are you going to light your candles? So you keep a yard-side candle, which burns 24 hours. And as Murphy's Law would have it, 5 minutes before the time to light candles, it splutters and it goes out. So now you need to light the candles second night. You don't have a flame. So if you live in a Hamish area, so you go across to the neighbor, go across with a candle, and you light from there, and then you walk out, and a gust of wind blows it out again. You go again to the neighbor, yeah? So that's really not okay. You shouldn't be walking through the street with a candle because of the likelihood to be blown out by the wind. So if you are going to beg your neighbor for a flame, you should go along with a lantern, with a jar, or something, some way that it's not going to be likely that the flame will go out during the journey from your neighbor back to your house. Truthfully, you are, even if you b'diavad, if you don't have the ability to go to a neighbor, you are allowed to ask a goy to strike a match to enable you to light Yomtov candles, because striking a match is a issur d'Rabbanan, and asking a goy makes it into a shvus de shvus, and then tzarich mitzvah to be able to light the Yomtov candles. So you would be, if your push comes to shove, you don't have a flame to be able to light the candles, whether it's the second night of Yomtov or Erev Shabbos, which is coming from Yomtov, then you can ask a goy to strike a match, and you can use that for lighting. I think I'm going to stop here, and we had some other very interesting stuff, but more in Agadato. It's hours late. I'm going to wish you all a Gemach Sima Tova, and I would like to possibly do another shiur, the next shiur, perhaps the same thing, Motzei Shabbos of Halocho-idea. If the Elam are interested, hopefully, there'll probably be some other interesting shilas to discuss from the Gela Maisa. So meanwhile, wish you all a Gemach Simchas Torah, and I thank the Eibishter for the amazing miracles which we saw last week in Eretz HaKodesh, and we should see Yeshua's a ganze Yeshua and Geula Shlema of the Moshiach Tzidkenu, Alter Rebbe.
Amen. Yasher koyach.
Shkoyach.
Let you
Well.
Good.